Hare Krishna. Thank you all for coming. I can't really say that because I'm also coming. Anyway, it's nice to have the Association of Vaishnavas. This is Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said that, I remember that verse, Sarvasanga Jama Mula Krishna Bhakti Janma Mule Hari Sarvasanga Krishna Prema Janme Anye Mukya Anga, I can't remember the whole word. Basically it says that the root cause of Krishna Bhakti is the association of devotees, and even when one is elevated to the platform of Krishna Prema, still the main cause is association of devotion. So very important that we appreciate these opportunities to associate through the holy name, because any other means except for prasadam and the holy name we may not agree. So therefore, these are good ways to associate. Hearing the Bhagavatam, taking prasadam, chanting the holy name. Even the Bhagavatam eliminates a good quantity of people, and so we stick with prasadam and the holy name, and we're pretty safe. Govinda Jaya Jaya, Gopala Jaya Jaya, Radha Hari, Govinda Jaya Jaya, Govinda Jaya Jaya, Gopala Jaya Jaya, Radha Hari, Govinda Jaya Jaya, Govinda Jaya Jaya, Gopala Jaya Jaya. Radha Hari Govinda Jaya Jaya, Govinda Jaya Jaya, Gopala Jaya Jaya, Radha Hari Govinda Jaya Jaya, Govinda Jaya Jaya, Gopala 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 Jaya Jaya, Radha Hari Govinda 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 Jaya Jaya, Jaya Jaya, Gopala Jaya Jaya, Radha Hari Govinda Jaya Jaya, Govinda Jaya Jaya, Gopala Jaya Jaya, Radha Hari Govinda Jaya Jaya. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Prabhupada said that if someone is intellectually inclined, we have so many books, and if they're not so much, they can always chant the holy name. Two of our main acharyas, Saranantas, Babaji and Gokishwara Babaji, only chanted the holy name. Practically speaking, they didn't speak too much. Narottam Das Thakur dedicated his life to glorifying the holy name. Srila Bhakti-Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur chanted 1 million names. Took him almost 10 years. That's a long time. Just chanting. Not we do a little studies and reading, but mostly just chanting. So this is our movement, and this is the hope for the world. 1975, there was tension between India and Pakistan. Srila Prabhupada said, there will be a war. He said, Russia will take the side of India, and U.S. will take the side of Pakistan. But Prabhupada said, and afterwards he said, U.S. will win, because they have on their money in God we trust. At that time, Russia was very communistic, so Prabhupada wasn't so favorable. Even though there's always been a close relationship between India and Russia. Even recently they discovered in Russia many different deities. You find some deity, somebody digging something, you find a deity. So that relationship is very strong. But Srila Prabhupada said is the name, that just because they have the name of God on their money, now as atheists they want to take it off. That's another thing. But then the next year, devotees came to Mayapur and they said, Prabhupada, there was no war. And Prabhupada, yes, Krishna has changed his mind. He said, because you are distributing so many books and chanting the holy name. So this, he said, if we want peace in the world, the chanting of the holy name must go on. So we were discussing a little bit this morning about this, that to be in Krishna consciousness, it's not just, sometimes we have the tendency to do the minimum. Of course, if it's for the body or the mind, we can do the maximum. If it's for our sense gratification, we're willing to make any sacrifice. But for pleasing Krishna, generally speaking, we have a tendency to do kind of what is the minimum? Just like 16 rounds, Prabhupada said the minimum. But he didn't say that so you'd have plenty of time to do whatever you want. The idea was, we have so much service to do to spread the holy name, that you can, if you do that, then you can do the minimum, so that you can do the maximum in the other area of spreading the holy name. Harinam Sankirtan, book distribution, lectures, programs, meant to please Krishna, glorify Him, and to become blissful in the chanting of the holy name, so that we come together, we chant like this, so that we can deepen our appreciation for the holy name, and that way people will see that happiness in our hearts. That is the duty of the devotee. So Krishna said, this is not just something new, not something Lord Chaitanya drummed up as a motivating factor. Nowadays they have these motivational speakers. They come up with a technique. So this is not Lord Chaitanya's technique. This is Krishna's technique. Satatam Gitayanto Yatatascha Didharata Namashanta Ramvakya Nityayukta Upasate. If we want to be Nityayukta Upasate, always engaged in serving Krishna, which is also the recommendation of Lord Chaitanya, Kirtaniya Sadahani, with the chanting of the holy name, then we begin it by chanting, and then not that we're chanting for our pleasure, although chanting will automatically produce pleasure. Lord Chaitanya says, it won't just produce pleasure, Ananda Muni Vardhanam, it will produce an ocean of pleasure. If you do it right. So if we're chanting, if we're not chanting, we're not feeling an ocean of pleasure, it means we have to examine our chanting. So, Rupa Swami, I just quoted a little bit this morning. He said, Tunde Tavani, Pratim Vitamate, Tundavali Lodai. That when I feel the chanting of the holy name on my tongue, I want to, I have great desire to chant more and more. When I hear it, and when I hear it in my ears, then what do I want to do? That I want to have 10 million ears. I was mentioning the other day, what would we look like with 10 million ears? But that's how much hearing power we want. And that's not sufficient, that's minimum. If we want the minimum, then you should have minimum 10 million ears to capture the nectar of chanting. And Shetapangana Samgini Vijayate. And when the holy name enters, first on the tongue, then it enters the ears, and then it enters the heart, and it conquers. Sarvendriyanam, it conquers all of material activities, all material desires, everything that interferes with our love for Krishna. Completely conquers it, dances with it. So he says, No jani janita kiyar viramitai Krishna tivarnavai. Who can understand how much nectar there is just in these two syllables? So many times I mentioned that a neophyte devotee, a new novice in Krishna consciousness, they may have difficulty in chanting, and also a pure devotee has difficulty in chanting. The difficulty for the new devotee is they have no attraction. And the difficulty for the pure devotee, they have too much attraction. Just like Srila Prabhupada, when he was nearby, 1975 in Venezuela, he was chanting Paramakaruna. And he just chanted Paramakaruna, and then he stopped. And his voice was faltering, tears were coming from his eyes. He couldn't chant anymore. 4 or 5 minutes like that. And the devotees were just didn't know what to do. They were looking at one another. Then his secretary said, chant. Everybody started chanting. After chanting, then Prabhupada came back to external consciousness. And he said, these two lords, Gornitai, they are so merciful. Paramakaruna, he's so incredibly merciful. And Prabhupada spoke. And then, after leaving Caracas, Srila Prabhupada went to Miami, and he saw they had big Gornitai deities, big brass Gornitai deities. Prabhupada said, Gornitai is sufficient because they are carrying the holy name. And then Prabhupada said, so when you go out, do not leave Gornitai in the temple. So they do not want to stay in the temple. They want to go out with you. So take them in your heart everywhere you go and fulfill their mission. And then Prabhupada went to the next temple, Atlanta. And again he sang Paramakaruna. And again he went into ecstasy. So a pure devotee like Srila Prabhupada has to struggle to stay in external consciousness. Even Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, so many times, he would, upon chanting the holy name, just upon seeing Jagannath, and thinking of why did Lord Chaitanya faint by seeing Jagannath? Because, 2 reasons. One, because here was Krishna looking for Radha, and he was in the mood of Radha, so he felt that Krishna is inviting me. But also because of Lord Jagannath's compassion. Lord Jagannath is so compassionate. Lord Chaitanya was feeling the mercy, and he fainted. And the only way he could come out of that is when the devotees arrived. Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya was taking care of him, and the devotees had not yet, the Lord Chaitanya, because Nityananda broke his danda, and several things like that. He said, either I go ahead or you go ahead, but we will not go together. So he came along, ran to the temple, fainted, and the devotees came later. And how did the devotees know where he was? Because when Sarvabhauma was taking him, he was full of effulgence, and people were trying to touch him. Sometimes in these, concerts or something, like the star jumps out. I'll give my warm welcome to His Grace Agnidev. We're speaking about the chanting of the holy name. So he came, that's his business.
Only business.
So Lord Chaitanya became so ecstatic, everybody wanted to touch him, so they were like kind of passing him along. And then that's how Nityananda Prabhu found out where he was. They saw him going off in the direction of Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya's house. They came, and they immediately knew what to do. They chanted the holy name, and Lord Chaitanya came out of his ecstasy. And then what did he say? I think I've done something wrong. I behaved improperly. And because of that, it shows that Lord Chaitanya is teaching us how serious we should be in spiritual life. How seriously we should take it if we commit some mistake in spiritual life. He said, from this time on, I will never approach the Lord Chaitanya. And from that day on, he stayed at the Garuda Stamba. And here we have short Garuda Stamba, but the Garuda Stamba in Jagannath Puri is very big. You can't touch his lotus feet. You can touch his lotus column, but not his lotus feet. And so anyway, the point is that that this is the effect. This is what we should be feeling, not to that degree maybe, but we should be approaching that. That's the goal of our life. The goal of our life is to enter into the chanting of the holy name. And the holy name is so merciful in Skanda Purana. It says, that this holy name is the sweetest of all sweet things, and is the most auspicious of all auspicious things. Sakalandigama Bali Satpalam Chitsvarupam. And it is the mature, eternal fruit of the tree of all Vedic teachings and all Vedic understanding. And it is Chitsvarupa, it is totally 100% spiritual. And Sakridapi Parigitam. If you just chant it once, Shadaya with faith, or Hilayala, or with negligence. Now that's not an option. It's not like, yeah, you can chant with faith, or you can chant with negligence, A or B. It doesn't mean that. A devotee will chant with faith, but even if someone, somehow or another chants, just like when Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu appeared, the Muslims were chanting, the atheists were chanting, they were imitating the devotees. And they were chanting, and they all got such a great benefit. So that's what it means. If you chant with negligence, it means if you have no knowledge of chanting of the benefits of the holy name, you'll still get great benefit. But if you have knowledge and then you're negligent, then what is that? Namapara. Then the 10th offense. It says, once you realize the glories of the holy name, if you don't want to commit that offense, don't hear about the holy name. Just like Vishaka said to the gopis, if you don't want to lose your social status, if you don't want to ruin your marriage, if you don't want to ruin your existence, then don't go to Vamsivata, where Krishna is there playing his flute. He will rob all of your good qualities. meaning all of your mundane thoughts. You would take them away and fill you with messages of God. So this is the power of the holy name. The holy name also will take away all unnecessary things. So therefore, Krishna says, Satatam, always chant the holy name. And and if you're chanting the minimum, like Srila Prabhupada said, minimum 16 rounds, then Krishna says, you must be engaged very seriously in devotional service. Because devotional service, it's all bhajan, it's all kirtan, it's all glorifying Krishna. And there's no restriction. Devotional service is so wonderful. There's no restriction. Srila Prabhupada, actually Rupa SWAMI in Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, Srila Prabhupada in Nectar of Devotion, tells the story from the Prabhupada Bhakti Purana of the Brahmin from Pratishthanapur. So this Brahmin, he was very happy. He had nothing. He had no money. But he didn't care. Because he was happy performing service to the Lord. Never complained. He didn't, like sometimes we become disturbed if we don't have our material situation, nicely arranged. And that's natural. One has to be psychologically, at least have a minimal psychological peace to be able to serve Krishna nicely. But sometimes we may achieve that, but sometimes there'll be some tests, some difficult moments, either individually or collectively in our lives and in the lives of others. And so, but we should be satisfied. Krishna says that Yajishtra the Santukshto, that one should be happy with that which comes of its own accord. And so we should be happy. Just like when Prahlad Maharaj, he was touring his kingdom and he met this one man performing Python yoga. Some people would like it, but they would probably be reversed. Instead of belly down, it'd be belly up. Python yoga. And so Prahlad noticed that his body was robust. And so he said, so my dear sage, you look like a great saintly person. May I inquire? It seems like you're well fed. To put it nicely. And he said, so he explained, yes. I accept whatever comes. Now I'm getting more benefit, more food is coming and so. But sometimes I don't eat. Sometimes I'm dressed in silk. Sometimes I have no clothes. And he went on and all these different possible conditions of life. And so Prahlad Maharaj could understand. This is the mood of a saintly person. That they accept whatever condition of life comes. Because, and how do they accept it? It's not just some, grin and bear it. It's not like that. You can't do it that way. You won't be able to stand it. But if you're Krishna conscious, the more Krishna conscious we are, then the more we can tolerate. Krishna recommends, Krishna says you have to tolerate anyway. You have to tolerate Sitoshna, Sukha, Dukkha, happiness and distress, cold and heat. But you can tolerate it to the point of not being disturbed. The more Krishna conscious you are. The more Krishna conscious you are, the more you can tolerate. the more you can become humble, the more you can love and respect all living beings. Samasarvasya Bhuteshu. As Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, we should see every living entity equally. Sometimes we think, I'm from here, I'm from there, these devotees from here are like this, the ones from there are like that. Westerners are like this, Indians are like that. And so we get caught up in these relative comparisons. But the way to get rid of all these interferences in our spiritual life is to become absorbed in devotional service. And so this Brahmin, he was absorbed. But one day he went to a lecture, and the person giving the lecture was speaking about how that Krishna can be perfectly served even by the mind. Now some of us may say, oh, that sounds good. Save on gasoline, going to the temple. But how did he serve? So he heard about that. He said, let me meditate on Krishna. But what was his meditation? He began to meditate. I want to offer the Lord so many wonderful things. So his meditation was so detailed. He meditated that I will go because he was living, he's living in central South India, and near the Godavari River. And so he began to meditate on having golden and silver pots. And he would go to the Godavari and he would bring water to bathe the deity. And he would see the deity and he would offer every pot of water. And then he would go to the Ganga and Yamuna, and he would walk, in his meditation, he would walk from Pratishthanapur to the Ganga. That's like, a long way. And to the Yamuna, which is a longer way. And to the Kaveri, which is the other direction. And he would bring water from all these holy rivers. And this was his meditation. Then he would dress the Lord in the most beautiful cloth, and he would cleanse the Lord and the deity, and so every detail. So this, if we want to serve Krishna in the mind, this is how you do it. Not that, look like this. I like this service. Serving more than we would be able to serve, even with our hands and our bodies and our abilities. And then one day, he was cooking for the Lord, and he made sweet rice. And then he was disturbed in his mind that the sweet rice has not had sufficient time to cool off, but it's time for the offering. He was a little late in his cooking. You can imagine it. How do you be late in your mind? He was so, every detail was there. And he was late, and then because he was late, the sweet rice was a little warm. And he was thinking, I can't offer this yet. It's time for the offering, what do I do? Then he put his finger, and he burnt his finger. And then he woke up, and he looked at his finger, and it was burnt. That was the power of his meditation. That's how we can check if we want to do mental service. We can check after you do your service and see if there's some silver and gold pots nearby. We'd probably take them and sell them. So this is the power of devotional service. It doesn't depend on the body. It doesn't depend on the mind. It doesn't depend on the intelligence. We can serve Krishna in all these different ways. We can serve Krishna with our intelligence. Krishna says 2 times in Bhagavad Gita, Mayarpita Mano Buddhir. One should worship Krishna. Krishna says one should worship me fully absorbing one's mind and intelligence in me. Otherwise, what does that mean? That means we don't do devotional service mechanically. We do it with great concentration, And this is the power. This type of meditation is so great. Just like Kundari Vidyanidhi, he was a good friend of Swarup Damodar. So one day they went to the Jagannath temple during the Odana Shasan ceremony, when they bring brand new silk cloth for Lord Jagannath. So he saw them bringing the cloth. You know, if anybody had bought cloth in India, especially from certain places, it's like very stiff. There's so much starch in it. So Kundari saw this, and he turned to Swarup Damodar and he said, "This is not proper. This cloth is very hard and it is not clean. How can you offer this an unwashed cloth?" And Swarup Damodar said, "No, it's all right. That's the tradition here." And Kundari said, no, it's not all right. And they started, had a transcendental argument. Even these great devotees, we think, oh, well, it's just here in Trinidad, there's little Guyana, that we argue with, otherwise, no. Even in Jagannath Puri, two of the most intimate associates of Lord Chaitanya, they don't agree. But that they don't agree doesn't mean they don't like each other. Like we don't agree, I never want to see this person again. Even in painting, I don't want to see their shadow. And if I see it, I'll step on it. So, they were friendly arguments, disagreement. But what is the object of disagreement, Krishna? How will I serve Krishna better? Stiff starch cloth or fresh washed cloth? One was tradition, the other was so they parted their ways, and that night, Pundarik, all of a sudden Lord Jagannath and Baladev appeared in his dream, and they were smiling, but they're always smiling. So they came up, and with their transcendental arms, they started slapping him on the cheeks like this, and both of them said, "We like our devotees like they are. Don't change them. However they offer, we accept it." This also happened to Ramanujacharya. Sometimes we think, oh, I'm a very advanced devotee. So Ramanuja, he was an advanced devotee. Now he was thinking he was. So he came to Jagannath Puri, and he was very determined. He saw he was used to the South Indian standards. South Indian very strict standards of worship, deity worship. And then he's in Jagannath Puri, he saw the pujaris, some of them just washed their face, rinsed their mouth, and went in and did the service without bathing, and all kinds of things. And so he called all the pujaris. He said, "Tomorrow I will teach you how to worship the deity properly." That night, Lord Jagannath appeared and said, "My devotees know how to serve me here. That is why I want to be served." When he woke up, he was in Kurmakshetra, 1,000 kilometers to the south. Lord Jagannath kicked him out. He's pure devotee, and he kicked him out. Of course, he was in bliss that I got to see Lord Jagannath personally deal with me. So Pundarik, he woke up in the morning, and he felt some soreness. He looked in the mirror, or looked in a reflection, and his cheeks were bright red, like swollen, and like beets. And he said, "I can't go out." And people ask me what happened. What will I say? I don't even know what happened. Then Swarup Damodar, they would always meet at the temple. So Swarup Damodar came to his residence, knocked on the door, and he didn't answer. And of course, Swarup Damodar, I think, thought that he's an old man, maybe something happened. And so he knocked. He said, "I'm not feeling well." I said, "Well, if you're not feeling well, let me in, I will help you." "Oh, no, I don't need." He said, "Please, you're my friend." So he opened the door, and sure enough, he said, "What happened?" So he had to tell the truth. He said, well, you know, I had this dream. So he explained the whole thing. And Swarup Damodar offered his respects. And he said, I know many people who have dreamt about Krishna, but I have none of them that dream becomes a reality. But this does happen. You know? Srinivasa Acharya, Lord Chaitanya appeared to him and said, come to Jagannath Puri and worship me. And he, on the way there, just before coming, just before arriving, he heard that Lord Chaitanya had left the world. He was going to leave his body. He said, all my life I wanted to meet Lord Chaitanya. But then Lord Chaitanya appeared in a dream and said, no, you go to Gadadhar. He will teach you Bhagavatam. So he went to Gadadhar and he said, the Lord has told me, teach me Bhagavatam. And he said, yes. But then he looked at his Bhagavatam and he said, unfortunately, you know, because of the separation from Lord Chaitanya, I've been crying for food profusely, and all the ink is washed out of my little palm leaves. Oh, if you want me to read Bhagavatam, you have to go get another one. No. As I said, there's no BBT, so and we're very fortunate we can just go online and order some Bhagavatam, or go to the temple, buy a Bhagavatam. Everybody should do that. And so when he got back, then Radha had left. And then Lord Chaitanya said, don't be dismayed, go to Rupa and Sanatana. Then he arrived near, just arriving, he arrived in Mathura, and he met one Brahmin, and he said, so, you're going to Vrindavan? Yes, I'm going to meet Rupa and Sanatana. He said, oh, you haven't heard? They have left this world. He's definitely not going to leave my body. But then Lord Chaitanya again appeared to him and said, go take shelter of Gopal Bhatta. No. That's where he finally went over. The point is that this is what happens when we chant the holy name very seriously. It's not that, just like Srila Prabhupada was in ecstasy, all these great, one may say, well, I'm not Swarup Damodar, I'm not Pundarika, I'm not, any of these devotees, I'm not Srinivasa Acharya, I'm just so-and-so from Kunupia or something. What's my, what is my hope? What can I possibly, how will I benefit? But that's why it says Hilaya. Even if you're a little negligent, not purposely, not that I'm purposely negligent, but because of the modes of material nature, because I've only been practicing Krishna consciousness for a year or 2 years, I may be a little negligent. So the Lord in the heart, He knows. He knows if you're doing the best you can. And the best you can is not the least you can. The best you can means according to your circumstances, family, friends, work, education. If you're giving your priority to Krishna, if Krishna is your priority, this is the main thing. Doesn't matter what stage of devotional service you're in, Krishna will see within your heart what is your priority. If your priority is Krishna, just like there was one Sanatana Goswami, one time before he had fully realized the potency of Madan Mohan, the deity would sometimes come out of the temple. And there was one old lady, I forget, she was a hot wash or something, not a very cultured lady. And so the deity would come to her, and the deity would ask her to cook. So one time she was brushing her teeth with a piece of eucalyptus, whatever. And the deity said, I want you to cook. And she said, okay. So she just took that stick and started stirring something, cooking. And Sanatana Goswami saw that, he chastised her like anyone. But then the deity appeared to Sanatana Goswami and said, I like her service. I want her service like this. So she was ignorant. Ignorant, pot washing lady. She had no culture, no training. But because she spontaneously, the Lord said cook. She had no cooking utensils, so she used her toothbrush, cooked for the Lord. He was happy. That doesn't mean we cook for the Lord with our toothbrush. We can't imitate these people. But what we did, the point is that the Lord will see what is your condition, and if you're doing your best to serve Him. And how do we determine if I'm doing my best? Because everybody might automatically think, yes, I'm doing my best. Of course I am. I'm a serious devotee. So we shouldn't think automatically that I'm doing my best. And that is why we associate with the Vaishnavas. Because by associating with the Vaishnavas, we can evaluate our devotional service. If we don't associate, if we leave it up to my mind, then I will always my tendency will always be to do the minimum. And if I do the minimum, then advancement is very slow. And when advancement is very slow, then we become discouraged. We think, oh, it's not working. This is the holy name is not working. Well, the holy name is always working. What's not working is my determination, my understanding. So that's what we can only really, we cannot evaluate ourselves properly. Unless you're very, very serious devotee. But even a serious devotee, Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami, when he was requested to do Chaitanya Charitamrita, he thought he was unqualified, and therefore he went to different senior devotees to get their blessings. But he still felt that he was not qualified. So he went to the deity, and the deity said, yes, you should do it. So the point is, even though he's such a qualified devotee, he wanted to be assured that his understanding that this service that he's being requested to do had the blessing of the Lord. Govinda, Baladev Vibhushan, when Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur was requested to do a Vedanta Sutra, to do a Gaudiya Vaishnava rendition of Vedanta Sutra. He was in the last stages of his life, was totally absorbed in Radha Krishna Leela, and wanted to do Vedanta Sutra. Totally, philosophical, deep philosophy. He was capable. But, he had his Shiksha disciple, Baladev. So he told Baladev, you do it. So Baladev, he said, I'm not qualified. He did not do it. So Baladev went to the devotees, and the devotees said, yes, you should do it. Then Baladev went to Govinda deity. And Govinda deity confirmed that yes, you should do it. He was so qualified. He was like such a deep scholar, South Indian scholar. And so then he did it. And he named his commentary Govinda Vasya. Named it after Govinda deity. So this is the humility. And that's where this determination comes from. Understanding I am a servant of Krishna. Without Krishna's mercy, without Sri Guru and the Vaishnavas to bless me, how will I be able to perform devotional service? And with that humility, then we can acquire that deep determination for advancing spiritual life and for performing devotional service. So the point is that So we should always be striving to do more and more for Krishna. This was Srila Prabhupada's example. He was always wanted to do more. So Krishna Maharaj told me that I worked with him for a long time. He said, I was always a little fearful to go into Prabhupada's room because every time I went in, he gave me another service. He said, because I had so much service, I couldn't even figure out how to do it with the time I had. And I knew that as soon as I go to Prabhupada, he will give me another service. And he didn't give him very easy service. He gave him very difficult service. And when nobody else could do it, Prabhupada would call him. And that was like the last resort. And so, we should feel like that Srila Prabhupada said that one time, and in his humility, he said, so I was not able to take up the mission of my Guru Maharaj right away. Prabhupada said, I wasted so much time. Prabhupada's humility. He said, but I never forgot for one day, I never forgot for one moment the order of my spiritual master. I was simply meditating how to carry it out. And so this is how we can have success in our spiritual life. We take the instruction of Sri Guru, of the Vaishnavas, of Srila Prabhupada, of Krishna in Bhagavad Gita, of Shukadeva Swami and Srimad Bhagavatam. We take that. So, sometimes people ask me, how do I know what Krishna wants me to do? He wants you to do so much. You should be asking more, how will I ever get it done? Because we read Bhagavad Gita, how many requests are there? Krishna requests to do this, do that, do this, to be like this, have this attitude. And then you go into the Bhagavatam. I call the Bhagavatam 18,000 reasons why I should surrender to Krishna. This is the, so we have so much. We should be figuring, how will I do all this in one lifetime? It will take me so many lifetimes. As Srila Prabhupada said, I know that I have crores of births yet to come. Let me simply do them in your service. This is a devotee, not even wanting to go to Vaikuntha. Of course, that Brahman from Pratishthanapur, he went to Vaikuntha. The Lord saw his service. The Lord called him to Vaikuntha. He was smiling. And the goddesses of fortune were wondering, why are you smiling? Why is Lord Narayan is so happy, smiling? And then Narayan said, I will show you. He called the Brahman to Vaikuntha. You can imagine, you could call your cell phone. Please come to Vaikuntha. Of course, he sent a chariot, brought him to Vaikuntha, and said, you have please be by your service. He was just meditating on Krishna. And he was promoted to the spiritual world. So, our meditation is through the chanting of the holy name, japa, kirtan, and by that meditation we can also go back home, back to Godhead. That is Srila Prabhupada's plan for all of us. We just have to take up the plan, and Krishna will facilitate it. So, these are some thoughts. Chanting and the importance of chanting in devotional service, and how deep devotional service can be and should be. It should be so deep that it distracts us from this material world. Right now we're distracted from the spiritual world by all the offers of Maya, the illusion of material existence. But now we have this wonderful Krishna consciousness movement to take us back home, back to God. So I'll stop here. Are there any Questions, comments?
Yes, Maharaj.
Yes, yes.
Without the presence of this Krishna consciousness movement, we know that Kali Yuga, the world would be such a faulty place. But even though this movement fortunately is present all over the world, still we seem to have this lacking of really imbibing it's so exalted, it's so glorious, the holy name, and the Lord is all attractive and everything. But then it seems as though still, while on one hand is present, but our ability to take this is so limited. So how do we reconcile that? Yes, on one hand, we're so fortunate this is present everywhere, but then we are not really taking advantage of this exalted thing.
That Krishna is competing with himself through his energy. He says, my Maya is very powerful because she's spiritual. She's one of my Shakti. She's one of my spiritual energy. So, because that is the price of Krishna consciousness. Otherwise, one may think, well, Krishna, wants us to surrender to him. So why doesn't he call off Maya? But he said, he promises, I will. Just he says that I will call on Maya, you just surrender to me. You show me you don't want Maya. Don't say, leave this Maya a little bit, but take away the part that I don't like. It's like saying, give me a towel, but I don't want to feed it. I just want the rear part, without the kicks, of course, but not the front part. I always use cows instead of chickens because eggs. Hopefully, sometimes you have to be careful. Sometimes I've seen devotees. Sometimes I go in there when I visit their homes. I go in their cupboard and look at what they have, the cookies or something, and check it out, the ingredients. So you have to be careful. So anyway, that's the thing, that Krishna, because Krishna, first of all, Krishna has declared, Upalayam Shashvatam, that the material world is temporary and full of misery, and therefore he has to fulfill his prophecy. And therefore and we can see that he's doing a very good job of, through his energies, making it miserable. Of course, I spoke to one person many years ago in Colombia, and they said, I'm not miserable, I'm happy. And I said, you never get sick? Very rarely. I said, I noticed that you're a very wealthy person. I said, I noticed you have big walls around your house. Why is that? Well, keep thieves out. So there is some misery, huh? If you didn't have the walls, what would it be like? Maybe you're right. I said, what about all the people who you're shutting out? Are they all happy? Is everybody happy around you? Will you always be happy? And I said, probably because when you go out, because you're wealthy, and there's a lot of people who aren't wealthy, and who have guns and things like that, you might be in anxiety. Yeah, you really have sometimes. And we went over a list of things, and finally, you're right. You're right. I agree. So, of course, most of the time people are not that humble. This is a nice person. That's some intelligence. Unfortunately, when our intelligence is not working, we think that the whole purpose of life is just to live in such a way that I can be comfortable. But there's no way to be comfortable in here. You can be temporarily comfortable, but you can't be permanently comfortable. Something will happen. Because like Prabhupada very often, especially when all the devotees, everybody has a chair here, but for most people. But when everybody was sitting on the floor, Prabhupada would say, so now everyone is moving. Because, sitting on the floor for like 45 minutes, an hour, your leg, this leg get tired. You may be a real yogi, maybe you can sit there for a few hours. But Prabhupada would say, this body must produce some difficulty at every point. And in one famous time, Prabhupada said that Durga, she will create misery. She has tried it. The three kleshas, the three miseries from nature or from the divine interference, from nature, from the body, or from other living entities. And then Prabhupada said, he saw someone kind of doubting. He said, and if that doesn't work, she has 9 weapons more. Otherwise, if the trident is not enough, miseries from your mind, miseries from your mind and body, miseries from other living entities, or miseries coming from destiny. If that's not enough, she has 9 weapons more. If you somehow or other escape those 3, she has 9 weapons more. So that's what causes us to, like you said, we were discussing this morning, the same point. We have this valuable jewel of devotional service. But sometimes we don't take advantage of it. We don't realize the value of what we have. Or we're thinking it will always be there. But it's not, there's no guarantee. There's no guarantee. So we should take advantage, just like Alcoholics Anonymous. What do they say? Today I will not drink. So, Maya is so powerful we can do like that. Today I will not be in Maya. Tomorrow I'll work with it. Today I will avoid Maya. Because if we think it's too hard to avoid Maya my whole lifetime. So just do a day at a time. No Maya today. Tomorrow, just like Sri Haridas Thakur to the prostitute. He said, I want to enjoy with you. And Prabhupada says, she exhibited postures that would bewilder the mind of Brahma. And Haridas said, I haven't finished my round tomorrow. You can enjoy. Let me just finish. He was chanting. She was listening. But what she didn't realize, by listening to that chanting of Haridas Thakur, her mind was becoming purified. Then the second day, she said, she again appeared, and Haridas was chanting. She said, I just finished, and tomorrow. And the next day, she was purified. And she said, actually, my purpose was to bewilder you. And Haridas, I know that. I just wanted you to hear the whole thing. And she became pure. So this is how we approach Krishna. We try to associate with devotees. We chant the holy name. And to realize what Jarshi Prabhu said, what nectar, what beautiful, unbelievably pure, wonderful gift we have from Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. To realize that, we must hear from Bhagavad Gita, Srimad Bhagavatam, Chaitanya Charitamrita, the nectar of devotion. So much nectar Srila Prabhupada has given us. Just to conclude, Vaisheshika Prabhu has a program, 2 programs. One is chapter a day. You read 1 chapter of Bhagavad Gita, meaning you read either the Sanskrit or the English, and you can read wonderful purports. It only takes 15 minutes. 15, 20, should read chapter 2, no, or 18, I think 25 minutes. But, generally, it doesn't take that long, especially in some of the shorter chapter 8, pretty short. So if you're in a hurry, read chapter 8. And and the other program is read Bhagavad Gita Bhagavatam in 1 year, which means only 41 pages a day. Because that depends on which version you have. If you have an electronic version, it may be different. But basically, like 41 pages a day. In 1 year, you can finish the Bhagavatam. So he said, if you do these 2 things every day, then you'll be so enlightened and you realize, just by reading 1 page, even if you can't read 41 pages, read 1 page. So much nectar is there on 1 page. So much nectar there, it's just like we spoke, 2 syllables of Krishna's holy name. We just have to take advantage of it and really pray to Krishna, just like the Brahmin of Pratishthanapur that just gives Lord. And what happens? For sure. So I think we can stop here. And thank you all very much for your kind attention. And maybe we can, since Agni Prabhu came, maybe we can chant for a few minutes. We can finish up with kirtan. That would be wonderful. Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Ananta Koti Vaishnava ki jai, Jai Gorka.